welcome to today's show. We're going to be talking about the astrology for January of 2024. I'm Starlene Breiter, and I'm here with my friend Mark Metheny. We are going to be sharing the upcoming astrology, as in the mundane astrology, the astrology for what's going on collectively for us for January. And this will be something we do on a monthly basis. Going forward, we'll be sharing the astrology for the previous month. For the future month and all of that. So stay tuned to listen to what's going on. I just want to say hi to you, Mark. How are you doing? It's great to be able to do a show with you again. We haven't done one in a few years.
No, we did. We were doing a lot there for a while, and then it got 2020'd.
Exactly. I know. And it's funny is I was listening to that show that we did on 2020. It was actually, we did it in 2019, right at the end of it. And this morning, as I was getting ready and all this stuff, and just some of the things that we talked about, I was like, wow, this astrology stuff is good. Not that it was really good, but it was interesting because we talked about a lot of potentials that were going on and a lot of things did really unfold like that. So, when we do this kind of work, just so you guys know who's watching, when we do this kind of share this kind of stuff, it's not necessarily that this is affecting your own personal chart. It's more of a collective kind of everybody is going through this at one time. So it may be affecting someone more than the other person because, it might be affecting something in your own chart. So that's just something to keep in mind. But, collectively, we did go through a lot in 2020. So we are now looking at 2024, and we're going to talk about the astrology starting from the beginning of the year, the beginning of the calendar year at least, and go through what's going on and what you can kind of expect on a collective level. So before we start, though, I just want to mention that Mark is also a professional astrologer. He's an evolutionary astrologer. You can also find him on his website, rabbithole.astrology.com. I will put the link and a link to his social media in the description box as well, so you can check him out. We've been friends for many years, and so great. So we start off 2024. We start off 2024 with the first of the year. And by the way, we're going to be talking about times and such, and that will be timed in Eastern USA time zone. So just keep that in your mind if you're in another time zone. So Venus square Saturn, January 1st. Well, actually, before we start, let's back up. Is there anything that you would like to say about the January 2024 just as a whole? Is there anything, that kind of sticks out for you, Mark?
Yeah, well, so there's two, I think, predominant things going on at this point. And right now, like, Pluto's at 29 Capricorn for like the 8 millionth time, it feels like. So we're at the end of that 20-year transit, which ends like January 21st, I believe, 21st or 24th. But then we have a dip. We have a 3-month dip back into Pluto and Capricorn in the fall next year, from September through like most of November, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
So of course that corresponds with other things that are going on at that time. So we're, when you have these outer planets hitting the well, I'm already babbling, aren't I? We have the outer planets hitting these later degrees, and they're retrograding back and forth and stuff. Like those last few degrees, you're really getting the culmination of what the energy of that planet is in that sign. And so this is really, and when it's Pluto, which it's been in Capricorn for like 20 years by the time we're out. I mean, that's really just like the power structures of the earth being changed and shifted. So I'm sure September through November of next year are going to be very interesting. And then the other thing that we're starting to gear up towards is the Saturn Neptune conjunction in Pisces. Saturn just went into Pisces last March and just retrograded direct like a month ago. But once we get into the middle of 2024 up through the beginning of 2026, Saturn and Neptune are going to be conjunct a lot of that time. And while there's not an actual exact conjunction in Pisces, I think that the first exact conjunction is at 0 Aries, but they're together at the end degrees of Pisces for like a year, about a year and a half roughly. And that's not happened since around like 864, which I think was the time of the Vikings. Viking era was going out, and like Christianity was stepping up, and those kind of things were going on. So just when you have any planets conjunct at the very end of the zodiac and then very beginning, there's a whole death, rebirth, transformation thing, and that going on with Pluto jumping back and forth from like 28, 29 Capricorn to 0 Aquarius. So lot of things are going to change over the next 2 years for certain.
Yeah. And I didn't even think about, so I love how you look at astrology. Sometimes I look so like not minutely, but like so intricately into something that I don't always look at the years, outside, right? I do, but I don't. So my thing is a little different, but I love talking to you because you are that big picture person who looks at, things from a bigger, very wide perspective. And, the Saturn and Neptune thing, I always think of Saturn, Neptune as like the spiritual seeker, the person that's the energy of trying to make the intangible tangible, so there's a feeling of that with Saturn, Neptune, and it's not always good. It's very hard to make the tangible or intangible tangible. So that can be a struggle for people, so that's an interesting thing coming up.
Yeah, absolutely. And like when you go back and look through so 864, I think the conjunction was around like 22 Pisces. So this one is going to be at like 28, 29, 0 Aries. So this one's going to be more intense than that one even. So I think there's really going to be a lot of cultural, religious, it's, when Neptune entered Pisces in like 2010, I think it was when it first went in there for the first time. In fact, the Fukushima thing happened the day after Neptune entered Pisces the first time, the Fukushima tsunami.
Yeah.
That happened when Neptune entered Pisces. So there you got a predominance of water causing issues. So yeah. So I mean, on the hopeful side, which is probably a rarity from me, you probably kind of have the potentials for redesigning society, maybe people looking different ways for spirituality, and maybe we'll incorporate more of that into the daily Saturnian 3D life. Is one of the positive things that could come out of that. And there's been lots of just political and religious things that have happened when Saturn and Neptune have went over that end of Pisces, beginning of Aries. When you go back in history, so like I went back, like I was trying to find when Saturn and Neptune were conjunct, like at 28 Pisces, 29 Pisces, and whatever, and like I couldn't find. I was back into the Egyptian BC era,
Wow.
Even to like 370 BC or something. It could not find where Saturn and Neptune have been conjunct at the degrees they're going to be conjunct this time. So there's also going to be some uncharted territory, and that coupled with the Pluto being into Aquarius for most of that time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it'll fun will be had by all, or not.
I know. I have a sun at 0 Aquarius, so I am feeling
Oh,
it, and I have felt it, and it's a process because it is a process, and it's not all bad. I will say that because there is change, in all of it, but it's definitely intense. Pluto has a way of creating that for people. But I think, I'm hopeful. I try not to be too Pollyanna with everything, though, and try to think about things in a realistic sense at the same time. But I do try to look on the good side of things as well. And it is
right.
energy, is what we make of it, right?
Right. I mean,
Yeah.
really, in life in general, you've got to prepare for the worst and strive for the best.
Yeah, totally. So let's jump into January, and we can start off with the beginning of January. We have Venus square on the 1st at 8:26 a.m., and this is in Sagittarius and Pisces. So what's your feeling on this Venus square going on, Mark?
So, there's kind of a lot of like Sag Pisces interplay going on. Because whereas Sag is kind of uh, has the reputation of being like the truth teller, and Pisces is kind of more like the mystic, the hidden type stuff. Even though they, hundreds of years ago, they both used to be ruled by Jupiter before they discovered Neptune. But there seems to be, Venus squared Saturn transits tend to be difficult. Anytime any kind of Saturn transit I've found, or any transit involving Saturn, you find like closed doors, like you find things that are no longer working, and then you have to make adjustments. So Saturn is kind of all about like making adjustments, and while
Mm-hmm.
while Venus, like usually people go to the love relationships thing, but also goes like Venus is also like finances and like how you nurture yourself, how you take care of yourself, uh, things like that. So, because
Mm-hmm.
if you jump back like a week, like December 28th, there's a Mars Neptune square in Sag Pisces, which is still just like 3 days passing. So that's only like a day and a half past the exact of that.
Mm.
And there's a Jupiter station on Saturday night, December 30th. Also, Jupiter finally goes retrograde, and so there's a quite a bit of stuff going on right off the bat there, starting the year off with Mercury retrograde and the Mars and Neptune still square, and Jupiter not really moving because it just stationed on December 30th. So Jupiter's still stationary when we have this Venus square Saturn, and Mercury is stationary also, about to go direct.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, so of course there's more that comes into it than just two aspects. And in vibrational astrology, we always like to try to look for 3 planets or more in either hard or soft aspects. We call them a pattern. But on January 1st too, there's a Uranus, Venus, Jupiter, and Uranus, Venus, Saturn energy in the 50-second vibration, which 50-second vibration is 13 times 2. So it's really 13 vibration and 2 vibration. So what that means is 13 vibration is about the special energy of what you are. It's a seeking something special, something outside of the norm. And then the 2 vibration is polarity. So you can think of those 2 things, polarity and seeking outside the norm, being, that's an interpretation of 52 vibration. So not to get too technical, but that's how this works, looking at the vibrations. And what we were talking about with the Venus square Saturn, there's also a Venus, Jupiter, Saturn energy playing on that day too. And it's a desire to seek something special, something outside of the norm. Venus, like you said, I agree with that. The idea of Venus being more than just love, it's about our attraction to what we feel is beautiful, what we feel is comfortable, what we feel at home with. And then Uranus makes things want to be a little bit spontaneous, a little bit chaotic, a little bit crazy, things that make me think about with Uranus, Jupiter, Saturn, Venus, because it's all 4 of them. I think I might have missed out saying Saturn in there, but it is in this pattern that I'm looking at on the first. Having all 4 of those planets connecting with each other make me think about doing something spontaneous and fun that you really love doing, but also being a little stuck, like Mark was talking about, getting kind of like a no or like a stuck with Saturn. It kind of like there's a polarity between just looking at Saturn and looking at Uranus. There's a polarity between the 2 of them. Uranus wants to be spontaneous and free thinking and do whatever. And then Saturn wants to be like, no, we're going to be grounded. We're going to do the not frivolous thing, So you have this interplay between the 2. So starting off the new year might be like, I want to seek something new, but what do I do? How do I do that? And looking at it from that perspective, you might think, well, okay, how can I renew myself? We talked about this before that, the 1st of January is the new year of the calendar, but being astrologers, we look at the new year being 0 Aries, which would be right at the end of March. So, but it is, a calendar new year. So there is an energy of something new that we're bringing to the table as a collective. And so thinking about how you might do that, what that might look like for you, and not getting frustrated if you feel a little stuck, and also not going off the deep end and doing something so spontaneous that you forget to be grounded. I think those are both important things going on with the first, especially revolving around Venus things, your attraction to what you love and what is attracted to you as well, what you're bringing into your life with yourself. So there's definitely a lot going on, even in that very first day of January. We also have, you mentioned there's a Mercury station direct, and I know you've mentioned this a few times in our conversations, that you look more at the station directs or station retrogrades as like more intense time periods than the retrograde itself. Is that correct?
Yeah, especially when you get so the planets don't, just for the viewers, I know you know this. So the planets don't really stop; they just the speed of the planets going around the Earth gets surpassed by the speed of the Earth. So it's like we're on a train, and it looks like the train is in front of you. Yeah. So yeah, exactly. So especially when you get with like the outer planet stations, like Mars or Jupiter on out, when those planets station like for like a week on either end, like when that planet's not moving, that's like a really big that's like the predominant energy of that period, really. Unless there's something else tremendous going on, but when a planet stations, that energy is, you've got like a 2-week period, a week on either side of the station. That's really that planet's extra powerful. Now, Mercury and Venus move pretty fast, so they pick up speed a little bit quicker, maybe. But like when you see like Saturn or Pluto or something stations, like it's at 1 degree for like 1 or 2 months. It's at like the same spot. Like it takes a long time for it to slow down and get moving again. So it just sits. My horrible analogy number 246 is it's like if you have like an annoying relative that comes to stay with you, like, you know, it's if they come and stay for a couple days, that's one thing. But if they're there for like months, like, you know, that you're very aware of that energy, like the whole time. Because it just sits there and just like it's not moving, and it's like you're going to deal with that energy on some level.
Yeah, it's like something that just seems like it drags on and on and on. I've had a few planets, outer planets, kind of doing that to me lately. So, but Mercury itself is not, it's not as intense as what you're saying. That makes sense. Mercury moves so quickly around the sun. I think it takes 88 days or something.
So like Mercury and Venus move pretty roughly. They stay in a sign for about 3 weeks, so those move pretty fast. And Mars isn't too bad, but yeah, like when you get to like Saturn and stuff, like when there's a station, like that's what you're doing. You're doing Saturn stuff. Regardless of what was on your schedule, you're doing Saturn stuff.
Might as well plan accordingly.
Exactly.
That's funny. Oh, and that does happen in Sagittarius too, by the way. So it's 22 Sag is the degree of Mercury station direct. So moving on the 4th, we have, and by the way, when I talk about the vibrations, I'm only picking out the really strong vibrations that are felt for several days throughout the year. So I'll only talk about a couple of them, because there's ones that go on like all day long. We could be here for the rest of our lives talking about them, but I'm picking out ones that are significant. So every time, you know, every couple weeks, there's another one that I'll talk about. So on the 4th, we have Mars going into the sign of Capricorn. So I know this is going to sound crazy to you, Mark, but I don't use the zodiac a lot. I do in terms of, I know where things are. So Mars is going into Capricorn. It's going to be close to my moon and, you know, all of this stuff. But in terms of the energy, I don't use it as much as I do with the, you know, the planetary patterns that they make. So tell me what you think about Mars in Capricorn.
So,
and that happens, by the way, at 9:58 a.m.
Yeah. So Capricorn is the taskmaster. So having Mars in Capricorn, you're going to feel more grounded because it's Earth energy, especially coming out of Mars and Sag. It's a pretty radical difference in those two energies. But just the workaholic energy, the, you know, being stable, practical, putting things in place, you know, getting things done, wanting to move up the ladder in whatever areas. That's all Capricorn stuff. And, you know, Capricorn is a very hard worker. And coming off of the, where's that going to be? Yeah, so that's going to be a little bit ahead of Mercury as far as the, it's going to take Mercury a while to get going. But detail oriented, you know, tightening finances, you know, you're able to put in those extra hours of work or whatnot that you need. That the energy's there to do that.
It's like a stabilizing energy, right? Like something where you're not afraid to put in the hard work. I guess, and you know, I understand the planets in the zodiac, but usually my interpretations, I don't usually go to them, but I do understand them. I guess I want to clarify myself on that one. I just find that the zodiac, you know, obviously plays a role in what's going on. Just the looking at the planets that it's connecting with, that tells like a bigger, deeper story. So Mars stays in Capricorn for what is it? Is it a month or is it 2 months? I can't
You know
remember
what?
how long Mars stays in a sign for.
It used to be 2 months, but it seems like now it seems like the Mars transit seemed to be about 6 weeks instead of 2 months.
Interesting.
They
Oh,
they
okay.
seem to be moving much quicker than before.
That's interesting. So, okay. So for the next 6 weeks or so, we'll be dealing with that beginning of January. That's actually not a bad energy to have going on with, you know, the first of the year. So people are starting to start something new, try something, to work on something with themselves. That's not necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and luckily um, we don't get we get a Mars Pluto conjunction, but it's in Aquarius that we miss out on the infamous Mars Pluto Capricorn conjunction, which didn't turn out very well in 2020 when we did the last show.
No, that was a very crazy year. I think everybody on the planet can see that.
Yeah,
A
that
crazy year
yeah.
2020 was going down in the books.
And there was more than that. There was Saturn was in there too, I believe. I think it was a
Yes,
Mars
Saturn.
Saturn Pluto stellium.
That's exactly, and Jupiter hit it too. It's like, I think
Yes,
Jupiter and then Saturn, or and then Mars hit it, because it was like one right after the other, because it was Saturn and Pluto first, and then it was like Jupiter, and then it was Mars. Like we didn't get the end.
yeah,
it was
yeah.
it was like a, yeah, I know. And so that's exciting, because it'll be very close to my sun when it conjuncts Pluto, in the beginning of Aquarius. Um, so let's see. So next thing we have on the 6th that comes up is we have a square with the sun squaring to Chiron, and that's at 15 Capricorn, Capricorn and Aries actually, and that happens on the 6th. So Chiron, how do you interpret Chiron? Like, what do you see Chiron as,
Uh,
like energetically?
Chiron, the wounded healer,
Mm-hmm.
the stereotypical thing for
Mm-hmm.
Chiron. But normally, I find that it either brings up an old wound or it gives you a chance to like overcome something or do something great that you haven't been able to do before.
Yeah, there's a charisma that we've found in doing research with Chiron, and I think the charisma comes from the wound itself. You know, something that you, like you just said, it comes like to move through it almost with a grace or with an ease. So maybe not an ease, that might be the wrong way to say it, but like with a something where you can gain something from that wound, you know, that was maybe from the past. So
Right.
it's interesting. Yeah.
And I find too like a lot of people like really dislike Chiron transits or aspects, and it's like I've kind of from bird's eye view kind of saying that it's like people who don't want to or at that time are unable to like heal wounds or deal with traumas like
Mm-hmm.
Chiron transits involving Chiron can be difficult, but if you're at
Mm-hmm.
a spot where you're like ready to tackle something, you can get good dividends from it.
Yeah, one of the people I do the Cosmic Conference, Cosmic Connections podcast with, um, talks about the Chiron return being, like the sweet spot in your life when you kind of like get to the get to the inside of something that's good, you know, because it's like you're able to process those things. So if you're able to do that kind of work, if you're not, like you said, wounded and you can't face those things, then maybe the sweet spot would come to you. I'm in my Chiron return. It's actually hit me, I think, twice now. And I get one more passing of it. But yeah, I don't think Chiron, I don't look at Chiron aspects as like that negative either. I think that they can have some potential for healing in them. Yeah. So Chiron in squaring the sun, what would you say about that? Would you say it's more like amplifying Chiron's energy?
Yeah. So something one of my friends says is that squares can unlock potentials, because a square is a call to action. A square has a lot of energy, so it can squares can be bad, certainly, but they can also, like, they can unlock potential to so when you have a square from, and again, the sun moves really quick, so that square to Chiron, you know, it doesn't last that long, but you know, the sun is like shining a flashlight on something. So I
Yeah.
think
So.
that the sun square to Chiron can be helpful, but it's going to bring something to your attention, most likely. You know, and too, like you said at the beginning, like if it's hitting in your chart, like if you don't have anything with those degrees, it's going to be more of a, you know, mild backdrop than it is, you know, burning, raging fire.
And that's the thing about like two planet aspects, right? So we're talking about two planet aspects that if they hit something in your own chart, then you're putting a third planet. So if it's hitting your sun or whatever, it's like that's bringing in a third planet. So it's my perception, and maybe you too, but the more planets you have involved in something, the more intense it can be, the potential of intensity that it can be. So yeah, definitely if you have anything at around 15, Capricorn, Aries, that, or even any of the cardinal signs really, that would be maybe a little bit more intense for you.
Yeah.
So moving on to January 8th, we have Mercury square Neptune. Mercury in Sag and Neptune in Pisces, of course. And so what are you thinking about that? Mercury square Neptune.
So that's another one in that series of Sag Pisces squares. So 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 there's days when, like, you open up whatever your social media preference is, and everyone says, like, you know, they couldn't sleep, or, you know, they were woken up in the middle of the night, or what, like Mercury square Neptune is one of those. So if that happens like in the overnight, then that's like a bad dream aspect or something. But what that is like, Mercury's your mental processes and Neptune is your intuition. That's Mercury square Neptune is a feeling that something is off, but you can't quite put your finger on it. So usually you become aware that something is off or something needs adjusted. It's usually how that plays out.
Yeah, that makes sense. What I always end up not being able to sleep on is a Uranus. I notice it more maybe just because I feel like, oh, it's one of those, I go to bed and I'm just lay there and I get back up. Like a Uranus Mercury, right. But Neptune Mercury too. I could see where you're a bad dream. That's right. Like an interesting way to look at it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Something insightful that you didn't necessarily want to hear or want to think about, something like that. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Just an intuitive knowing that, like, something is off.
Yeah. That is definitely a good way to look at it. So on the 9th, we have a couple different aspects going on, both of them in the evening. First is the sun trining Uranus. So, and that's sun in Capricorn, Uranus in Taurus. Poor Taurus people have been getting beat up with this Uranus. I guess I have a lot of Taurus people in my life, so I'm seeing that
Yeah.
more. But like, man, Taurus is getting, Uranus has been pretty intense, these Uranus transits. So Sun trine Uranus, I don't know. Do you think trines are like super easy? So, I mean, I think they have potential to be difficult at times. They can, they might be easier to deal with than a square, but they also can be a little bit chaotic because there's not like a direction, especially when you're involving Uranus in the mix. There's like
Yeah.
not a direction to go in, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think trines are really good, but I think the vast majority of them get wasted because it's like, especially with the transits we've had the last, 3 years, 3.5 years, it's like you finally like sun trine Uranus is like you feel good for a minute. Now,
Yeah.
like you can
Yeah, because
do
it
a
doesn't
lot
last.
more than that. You can do a lot, but a lot of from what we've just been, the last 3.5 years, whatever. It's kind of more of a you get to take a breath, and if that's hitting good in your chart, then you can do big things and stuff. I mean, trines are definitely helpful, but like I said, a lot of times the trines just get wasted because it's like you feel good for a minute, and it's like
Hmm. Yeah, and that the Uranus has been on my ascendant for so long. I'm
uh,
getting beat up from every direction. Uranus and Pluto. It's like, I mean, it's not exact, but it's there. It's been for some time because, as we know, Uranus, I think it moves what, like 7 degrees. I think, if I remember correctly, in the whole year because of the retrograde and the going back and forth. I think the amount of space it moves through the zodiac is like 7 degrees or something. It's like, when I learned that, I was like, I didn't believe. I think it was Linda Berry who taught me that, and I was like, I didn't believe her. I had to do the calculation and look at it and go, wow, that's crazy, because it just keeps going over the same spot. I mean, all the
yeah,
outer planets are like that, but so when Uranus is hitting something of yours, it's there for a while. I guess that's my point. But yeah, Uranus and Sun, that can definitely bring a little bit of fun, maybe spontaneity too. I think that if you can
yeah,
manage in some fun there.
yeah. Definitely like a positive change to the routine for a few days.
Yeah, yeah, and Sun, of course, moves quickly. So also on the 9th is Mars sextile Saturn, and this is just like a 2.5 hours after the Sun trine Uranus. And so Mars sextile Saturn. What is the energy like that? You would say for that? Because to me, that's like the opposite of Sun trine Uranus. It's almost like I want to stay steadfast, and I want to dig my heels in and figure out what I want to put my energy towards. That's Mars Saturn. And then Sun Uranus is like, I want to go have fun. So it's like you're kind of pulled between two different opposite sides of the spectrum.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, those are definitely two different feeling aspects. But yeah, like uh, the Mars sextile Saturn, I think, is um, easily being able to accomplish something because you
Mm-hmm.
have the Mars, the drive, the willpower, and then Saturn, the discipline, to make a sustained effort at something.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to say, like I really undervalued sextiles for a long time, but I've kind of found like you get more bang for your buck out of sextiles than you do a lot of aspects because like I said, with the trines, a lot of
They're
that kind
too
of gets
flowy,
wasted.
right? Yeah.
But those sextiles, you really get you get a lot more bang for your buck out of those than.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, with the Sun trine Uranus and Mars sextile Saturn in the same evening, it's like that's, you know, if you have a bunch of stuff to do or whatever, organizing or cleaning or whatever, it's like, you know, that's good energy for that, or to, you know, get organized for the whatever the next thing you got coming up is or whatnot.
Yeah, that makes sense. Oh, and there's something I forgot to actually add here. On the 7th, so we were talking about the 9th, but on the 7th, there is a vibration in, this sounds crazy because it's a high vibration, but it's 105 vibration. And, you know, maybe it doesn't sound crazy, but that is 35 times 3 or 5 times 7 times 3. And it involves Uranus, Saturn, and Pluto and Mars. So here is this smooth, energetic playfulness that kind of comes out of it. This is the vibrations, the energy of the vibrations, but there's also like an introversion here, because 7 vibration, those are sextiles, and those are the introverted, you know, I like to think of the inner monk part of yourself, you know, when those come along. And it's with these planets, it's almost like Mars, Saturn, Uranus, Pluto. It's like this desire to be free, but also to be spontaneous at the same, to be free, but also to dig your heels in and kind of go in that direction. This this pattern only lasts because it's a very high vibration. They don't last as long as other ones, lower vibrations would. So this one doesn't last all that long, but it is a time. So that's the 7th, that it would feel a little bit like you want to dig your heels in, do something that's worthwhile, that's strong, that you want to enjoy doing, but you also want to kind of be introverted at the same time, but in like a kind of a fun kind of way with yourself. Like sometimes being home by ourselves is kind of like, people enjoy that, you know, that might be something to do, but doing something, not just being home sleeping, maybe doing something around the house, doing something that you enjoy. And that is going on January 7th. So yeah, and also just to touch on this too, it's a vibration. There's multiple vibrations going on the 8th, and they're all in the family of 5. So 5 vibration is very playful. It's creative. So we have like 10 vibration, 15 vibration, 30, 35, 5. They're all multiples of 5. And then 70, 80. These are all multiples of 5, which means that there is a lot of potential for creativity. So this goes on the 8th and part of the 9th. So the 8th and 9th, you might even notice yourself wanting to be really creative, wanting to have fun, to do something that inspires you. The planets that it's mostly involved with is like is Mercury, Jupiter, Venus, Sun, Neptune, Jupiter. These planets are wanting to bring something from the inside out in a creative fashion because it is 5 vibration. I always think about 5 vibrations as doing something playful like a child, but then when you tack on 5, 10, 15, 20, you are bringing other people into the mix. So there might be a feeling of wanting to have fun with other people and be kind of out there in the world. And that is the 8th and the 9th of January. So yeah. Okay, so that's fun. Okay, so you are like the node. You are like the node person, one of the node people that I know. So the next thing we have coming up on the 10th of January is the sun squaring the nodes at 20 Capricorn, Aries. And 20, if I'm not mistaken, 20 was the place that Saturn and Pluto conjuncted in 2020. Was it 20 degrees, I think, of Capricorn?
I think I can find
I
that
can pull
really
that up.
quick.
Yeah, I think it might have been. But yeah, so that's that spot.
Yeah, absolutely. um,
If I was not mistaken, it's January 10th, but I don't know for a fact. I think that's what think that might be what we said.
Yeah, it's Mars.
Oh, it's 22 Capricorn. So I
yeah,
was mistaken
that
about that.
seems correct.
I don't know why I thought 20.
Mars, Jupiter, and this was in this was kind of in, there was something in January, and then like around March 10th of let's go further. Around mid-March of 2020, there was a Mars-Jupiter conjunction at around 22, 23.
Mm-hmm.
And sorry, they were conjunct Pluto also.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there was those four, within 10 degrees of each other. And then, yeah, in January, there was a Sun, Mercury, Saturn, Pluto stellium. So there was two sets, one in January and one in March, when things started shutting down.
Mm-hmm.
Right around in that 22 to 24 area, where there was like 4 Capricorn planets like each time, right around there, and that was the end of that timeline.
I know. It's really weird is I look back on my text messages right in January, and it was right about January 10th or so. I would say it'd be between the 10th and the 15th. And a friend of mine is from China, but she lives in the United States. And I was like, oh, so I hope your family's okay with this thing that was going on over there, whatever. I don't know if they even knew the name of it at that point. And I'm like, texting with her, and she's like, oh, I hope you're good too. You stay safe. And I'm like, I'm in the United States. You know this. Like, what would you think? Why would you say that? And then we laughed about that later on, because we were like, oh, yeah. Wow. And we actually reminisced and looked back at our text messages, because we were like, that's an odd conversation to have, And then we're like in the middle of like April, and we're thinking to ourselves, hey, it's kind of funny that we had that conversation. But you have to wonder if the people in charge consult astrologers.
Yeah, I think we can safely say that they that they do, the way that things happen around the Neptune stations and heavy Pisces energy and everything. I mean, that's definitely people's skills at figuring out what's going on are perhaps not at the level that they normally are.
Yeah, exactly. So back to the 10th. So this was the sun squaring the nodes in Capricorn Aries. And my whole point in diverting that conversation there was because I was thinking it was the 20 Capricorn that was going on. So when you think about that spot, so it was 22, it wasn't 20, but when you think about that spot of 22 Capricorn, when things started really blowing up a couple years ago, do you notice when down down the road, after those transits are already passed and other planets cross over that spot, that there is like almost a reverberation or something? Like, how would you describe that?
Yeah, no, I think there definitely is. So I'm sure there could be a 58-year long argument about how long something is out there and what that is, but I know that's true, because I started noticing this with like commercials on TV and stuff, like when you would see a car commercial or something, to have like they'd have a really old song or an obscure artist or something on it, and I would go look up, and it's like, oh, this person's Jupiter. When this song came out, Jupiter was at the same spot, 37 years ago that it is now. And
Wow.
I would notice like crazy stuff like that, like like, oh man, I haven't heard that song in a long time. And you go back and like, oh, that this album was released on yada yada yada, and we've got like the same lineup or there's something touching those same degrees. And I did that like 500 times of going and looking something up, and it's like, oh wow, hey, same thing.
Well,
Same
that makes sense
energy
too
out
when you
there.
exactly that makes sense when you think about it, because if you think about our natal charts are just placements of where our planets are when we're born. The transiting planets, when they hit those spots, they affect us personally. They're things for us. So everything in and of itself can be a natal chart. The beginning of starting this recording is a natal chart of this recording, and so on and so forth. So on some level that could kind of make sense, like you can think about it from that perspective. So
Yeah.
Given that the 20 Capricorn is close to that spot where Saturn and Pluto conjunct in 2020, is there something you're feeling that is kind of, also happening with the nodes when they make that square to the sun?
Yeah. So when I see something, so in like evolutionary astrology, when something is square to the nodes, that's called a skip step. So that planet's going to want to be heard. So that people born around January 10th are going to they're going to have that added energy, or because the nodes are kind of road signs. The north node's the future, the south node is the past. So when the sun square the nodes, it's definitely going to be the sun is going to be in high operating fashion at that point.
Yeah, they call it a skip step. That's interesting. I didn't know that. I've heard of it called the bendings, like when it's something's at the middle or what's squaring the nodes. But that's interesting. So so might it be something where someone's digging something from their past, bringing it into the present? Is that possible of what's going on
Yeah.
during the sun square
So
node?
like so like I think of the nodes as kind of like turnpikes. Like those are like decision times. Like you'll be forced to make a choice between staying in a comfort zone or reverberating with something from the past, or taking a step towards the future. That's kind of uh, how I look at things when they're aspecting the nodes. Is like there's going to be like a choice to be made, and with the sun square the nodes, it's like, am I going to do something to put myself out there, whether it's work related or what, or doing a show or whatever, or am I going to like stay
Mm-hmm.
you know
It's like
d-
which direction?
stay in a comfort zone or something.
That makes sense. That makes sense. And that will be interesting to see what transpires during that time. So moving on to the 11th. Did I go over this one? No, I didn't go over this one yet. We have Venus moves on to a trine to Chiron. And that is another Sagittarius aspect. Chiron is what degree is Chiron in? Because I think this was actually
I mistyped there. Yeah, it's 15
I'll forgive
Sag Aries.
you. Aries. Okay, that's what I thought. Is Chiron's in Aries?
I,
Yeah.
Yeah, I mistyped there.
So
Yeah.
what
So
would
so
you?
again, yeah. So just with Venus trine Chiron, that's just that's kind of similar to the Sun trine Chiron or square Chiron thing we had earlier with I just
Mhm.
except Venus trine Chiron is a good opportunity to uh, move forward on something. You'll see Venus trine Chiron in I do a lot of sports astrology and stuff like that. You'll see players have like an all-time great game or like an outstanding performance or something when there's a Venus is trine Chiron, if it's
Hmm.
hitting in their chart. Um, so that's a time where you can really make a big leap forward. Um,
Hmm.
do something above normal.
Hmm. Very good. And that may be like, because it's Venus, would it be maybe something also to do with, is it, because it's interesting that Venus would be related to sports, but I wouldn't normally put them together, but maybe it's the people doing the sports love what they do, like they're passionate
Yeah,
about
yeah,
it.
because I think yeah, because I think um, like Venus trine Chiron, like scoring the easy touchdown in a football game or something, like the guy guarding you falls down or something, like you get like a sudden like lucky kind of break. I stumbled across this. you you may have run across the Magi astrology, and they
Mm-hmm.
talk about the um, like Chiron and stuff with sports and stuff, and I'm like, I'd never heard anybody, like I'd not heard of any of that stuff. And I started implementing that into my signatures in Sirius, and I'm like, you know what? They're on to something. Those, even though it would seem to, you would think like Sun, Mars, Jupiter, Uranus are the sports planets, but if you're if you're doing something, it's when there's a positive Venus transit, then there's something looking favorably onto you. So if you're sitting on the couch eating Doritos or whatever, that's one thing. But if you're like out and like doing something, like the universe is at your back at that point. So if you're in a position to do something in the public eye or whatever, then that can be a great opportunity to do something outstanding or something that shines favorably on you.
Yeah, that would make sense with Venus and Chiron too, in the trine. That would make sense. So maybe some favorable things will happen on a collective level with us around that time. So then moving on to the 12th, we have Mars trining Jupiter, and that's Mars in Capricorn and Jupiter in Taurus. So Mars and Jupiter makes me think about expanding your energy, kind of getting out of your little comfort zone and going out into the world, kind of like with your energy, doing something that might be not the typical, the normal thing that you do. But they're in also in Earth sign, so maybe not. I don't know. What do you think about Mars trine Jupiter and Capricorn Taurus?
Yeah. So if the um, they get both Capricorn and Taurus, both Earth signs. Yeah, to me that Mars is expending energy. And so with the trine to Jupiter, that's that's definitely your energy level, or things you put your energy into should go much better than normal, as long as the Jupiter Taurus part can get off the couch. It's the but Mars trine Jupiter is very beneficial for so that happens at like 5:41 in the morning. So like to me, that's going to be like you're up early and ready to go with the day or whatnot.
Yeah, getting up, getting something going. Mars and Jupiter, there's like wanting to expand. Would you say that's a lucky transit too? Mars trine Jupiter?
Yeah, I would say anything like involving Jupiter could be a lucky transit. But like with Mars there, it's going to be like something that you need to put effort into, something you need to
Actively seek.
Yeah. You have to take the initiative.
Yeah, that makes sense. So moving on to the 13th. So we have Mercury goes into the sign of Capricorn at 9:49 p.m. and Mercury into Capricorn being an earth sign. And like we talked about I like to think of Capricorn as the sign that wears the different hats to kind of orchestrate things, make things happen, facilitates the way things happen. So, what is your vibe on Mercury entering into Capricorn? What are you feeling about that?
Yeah. So I think Mercury and Capricorn, I think like after the Mars, Mercury and Sagittarius, I think Mercury and Capricorn is going to be the cleanup after the party. As you're going to want to, you're going to look at your finances and things like that, and more career things. And sometimes it's just like, what, I want to organize stuff and put things in its proper place. That's a very Capricornian thing, is kind of the 3D status quo kind of. I want to put everything to where it's right and in its place, so that I can build upon that. Because that's another level of the Capricorn thing, is building solid structures that you can build on. And I think maybe the Mercury and Capricorn just kind of mentally chill people out a little bit, and have focus on putting things in order. That feels like a very Capricornian thing.
I get the vision of like a filing system and kind of categorizing things in the filing system the way that they should be categorized, or right. They should be categorized. But yeah, that makes sense, the Mercury in Capricorn. So hopefully that will help us
organizing your tax papers.
Yes, organizing my cats, put them in their perspective spots.
Yeah.
That's funny. Okay, and then the next day on the 14th is Venus trining the nodes, the north node. The north node. Yeah. So, and that's in Sagittarius and Aries. So when Venus trines to the north node, what is that? Is that more like kind of looking towards what you're feeling like emotionally or something like that? I don't know how. I'm not so good at the nodes, to be honest with you. I've had a lot of like conflicting different people telling me things about the nodes, and some of it is stuff you can't really quantify, or 3D-ify, I should
Quantify
say.
easily.
So
Yeah.
I don't know, like I don't know if I have a strong opinion on the nodes yet. But yeah, what's your opinion on Venus trining
Yeah.
North Node?
So I find you don't necessarily get transits to the nodes. I kind of think of as like movie previews. You don't necessarily get the movie right then, but you get it's like a movie preview. Like you see a preview of, oh, I would, whatever. I'd like to travel to this place. I'd like to work for this company. I'd like to go do yada yada. But you get kind of the movie preview of something you would want or desire or want to have or whatnot. So it's it kind of puts the thought in your head, even if it kind of could cause the initial action to move towards something.
That's an interesting way to look at it. So kind of like a preview for something. And would that be revolving around, because it's Venus, would that be revolving around things you're attracted to or love, or like the beautifying things that we talked about?
Yeah. I mean, it can absolutely be that, and it can also be So I have, full disclosure, I have Venus conjunct North Node in Taurus. So I think of that. So like I think of like creature comforts, or even more food. I'm very food oriented. So I'm like a dog. I'm very food oriented. So so it doesn't have to be like a lover relationship. It can be, it can be coming up with an idea to make money, which would be a Taurus, a Venus thing. Uh, or, or even, literally like a movie preview, you can, that's a movie I'd like to go see when it comes out, or something to that effect. Like it's coming into your peripheral at that point, but you may not, the actual movie may not be there yet to where you can go see it, but
it's coming. It's a coming attraction. There you go.
Coming. You're right. You're aware that it will be here soon.
That's interesting. That's an interesting way to look at it. And then the next thing that happens that day is the sun makes a sextile to Neptune. And that actually happens in the evening at 7:37 p.m. Capricorn sun, of course, and Pisces moon. So what are you feeling about sun sextile to Neptune? Is that more of an active kind of feeling, I think, more than the moon? So maybe it's like a reprieve from the afternoon slump.
Yeah. So to me, when it's like, when Neptune's involved, that's kind of low energy. That's so to me, sun sextile Neptune is like, it just feels calmer, more content a little bit. I mean, Capricorn Pisces mixes can be kind of low energy, anyways. But with the sun sextile Neptune, I think that one's just kind of a throwaway one for me, really. That's just kind of that's a chill at the house kind of thing, following, being whatever 6.5 hours or whatever after the full moon.
Yeah. In the sun transits, although they're significant, they're not as quick as the moon, but they do, they only last a day or two. They don't last long. They don't usually make massive changes in your life, especially if it's an easier an energy with each other. I always think
Right.
that sometimes with Sun Neptune, that sometimes I feel a little bit like I'm not clear, like being clear, that's just not what's on the table in that moment. So yeah, that can happen. So the very last bit of the sun being in the sign of Capricorn, we have Mercury. Well, this is Mercury sextile Saturn on the 18th. And so that's in Capricorn and Pisces. That would make me think of being able to think about things critically, or being able to think about things in a solid way, bringing them into the 3D world. What would you think about Mercury and Saturn, sextile Saturn?
Yeah, I mean, I would think of that the same way. Mercury and Saturn is going to be, thinking about your finances and your legacy, and being able to again, organize things.
Mm-hmm.
Feeling grounded, and like, thinking of ways to move forward on things.
Mm-hmm.
So, and again, that's at 3:49 in the morning. So, I mean, the night before, you'll be able to do that extra bit of work or organizing or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Inevitably, somebody who's a Capricorn is going to yell at me saying they're not organized, but in general, they're going to.
That's funny.
Yeah, yeah. Mercury sextile Saturn is organizing your toothpick drawer. How about that?
Organizing the little
So
tiny things.
yeah, yes, exactly.
That's funny.
That's a good.
And then, so then moving on to almost the very end of Capricorn, but we have before that is Venus making a square to Neptune, and that happens on the 19th. And Venus square Neptune is, I don't know. I think Venus and Neptune, there's an idealistic view of the world, or what we love, and a feeling of idealism that comes from Venus Neptune. There's a feeling of maybe wanting to bring that into the world in some form, but maybe it's not easy to do because Neptune isn't always in the physical reality of the world. What would you
Right,
depict that as, Venus square Neptune?
right. So that's, yeah. So squares have energy to them, even though, so Venus square Neptune can be, figuring out where your finances and your idealism don't meet with each other.
Mm.
Because that could be like Venus square Neptune could be like excess spending, like, oh, if I buy this thing, it'll make me happy, or if I get that thing, it'll make me happy. But I think Venus square Neptune can be a little bit of the something's off. Where does my spirituality and my creature comforts, like, where do they not meet? Where do I need to make corrections?
Hmm. Yeah, that would make sense too. And trying to figure out how to make those corrections. Well, that's a morning aspect. So hopefully that will set a tone for the day. It's a
Yeah.
Friday morning, actually, Friday morning aspect too. So on the 20th, we have a few different things going
So,
on.
yeah. So
On fun
those
stuff.
three are kind of all connected,
Yep, they
sort of.
are. So the sun makes the conjunction to Pluto, and then enters into the sign of Aquarius, because Pluto's at 2959, so almost in Aquarius. And then the sun enters Aquarius, and then Pluto enters Aquarius. So all that happens in one day, which is really wild.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's
So we
kind
have,
of that's the last Sun Pluto conjunction of our lifetime.
Oh.
In Capricorn. I'm sorry, in Capricorn. That's the last Sun Pluto conjunction of our lifetime in Capricorn.
Oh,
And it's
interesting.
at
And
29:59.
geez, 29:59. That's wild. That's the very, I mean, like the last minute of
Yeah,
Capricorn.
because literally, 21 minutes later, the sun enters Aquarius. So that's really kind of the last gasp there. Now there's that 3-month period in September through November, but that's pretty much the last gasp of Pluto and Capricorn. I don't even want to say that. I don't want to tempt Pluto. Yeah. So, but essentially, that's pretty much it for Pluto and Capricorn.
That's funny.
Yeah,
That is funny.
Learned my lesson.
And so when Pluto's moving into Aquarius, what is your take on that? Like, what do you feel like that's going to bring to our collective group of humans?
So here
Collective world.
you'll love this. You'll love this one. So I think that kind of like our old timeline ended in 2020. That like I can't really hardly remember or connect with hardly anything from before 2020. I kind of think our timeline ended at that point. And we're in this death purge rebirth process, and we're kind of in the middle of that. And I think like early 2026 is going to be, that's going to be when we kind of figure out which way our world's going at that point. So I mean, Pluto and Aquarius, I mean, like historically, you look the last time, that was the end of the Civil War, the French Revolution, or before that was the French Revolution. You know, there's all kinds of, you know, a Pluto and Aquarius. You know, you have to kind of correlate it with Frankenstein. I mean, I believe the book came out when Pluto was in Aquarius the last time, is when the Frankenstein novel came out. Yeah.
Wow.
And so I think there will be people that have plans for which way they want to go, but I think a lot of it's going to be go sideways, and we'll be pulling different pieces together to kind of make our reality Frankenstein.
It's almost like we're already there, but that's I can see what you're saying, because it's since 2020 it has been really crazy.
Right, yeah, like everything that almost everything that I did before 2020, like I don't do anymore, or I don't know a lot of those people anymore and stuff. It's like, it was like that was a definite, and those two Capricorn stelliums were definite ending of like where anything on that timeline was going. There's a small handful of things that have remained, but you've had to like breathe life back into those things to keep them going, or to have them reborn or whatever. Anything from before 2020 is just like it's gone on some level, or many levels even. So it's like you have to figure, stop putting your time into things that you realize are gone, and feed the things that you want to have in this new the new reality. And I'm sure people are going to push stuff towards, AI and stuff like that. And I'm sure there'll be a lot of that. But then it'll be like, that it's not going to all go that way either.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be a mishmash of different pieces, parts that people are going to have to figure out how to make those things work together.
Yeah. Yeah, there's always a little bit of that before settling into something happens anyway.
Yeah.
When did Pluto move into Capricorn? What year was that? Do you know?
2000, is it 2008, I believe? Or no? Yeah, I think that's it was before then. Okay, so it originally went in there. Oh no, I'm right. January of 2008 is when it originally went in there.
Interesting. So literally 20 years. Well, no, what am I saying? I can't count. 2008.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
so
that's
Pluto's on an ellipse. Well, all the planets are, so they're not exactly the same amount of time in each sign. But
right.
Yeah, Pluto and Neptune both they're more elongated. Their ellipses are. I know that much.
Yeah, January 26th of 2008 is the first entrance. Now it did the retrograde back into Sag. Then it was like 2009 before it went into Capricorn for good. Yeah, that's shorter of a transit than I thought, because that's only going to be end of 2024 is when Pluto moves into Aquarius for good. So that's only 16 years. For some reason I thought it was closer to 20. I thought it was 18 to 20.
Yeah.
There,
well, some signs, it depends on what sign, and I don't know which one is which. I'd have to look, but some signs it is longer than others. I think it might even be more than 20 years. I think it might be, don't quote me, it might be Aries. That's the longer path, because it's not a circle around the sun, it's elliptical.
Right.
So the stretches that we see from our earthly perspective is that's like more time, especially that's pronounced in Pluto and Neptune, because they're the further ones out, and they're the ones that have the more elongated ellipses. Yeah. But I don't remember exactly what signs they are. And there are times when Pluto is actually closer to us than Neptune. Did you know that? They actually, their paths cross, where Pluto's actually slightly closer than Neptune. I've always wondered, like, where in the future are they going to collide? Hopefully a long time, but where will humans be in that time frame? Yeah.
Right. Now that's
so Pluto and Aquarius, that's interesting. So you're thinking like a lot of things will start to kind of take off. I know I've heard a lot of people talk about AI and the different things that they're doing with that, which does seem to be speeding up quicker, which makes sense, because it's just like that's the nature of technology, I guess, in that sense. It goes quicker the longer it goes on. The more advanced it gets, the quicker it gets. But yeah, and when you said the idea of mismatch of many different things, it made me think of like a patchwork quilt that is many different pieces of fabric sewn together, and that sewing takes a while. That's just the image that I got when you said that. But eventually things get sewn together, and then Pluto will move, I'm sure, into Pisces, and then that will be even a little bit more like, I'm not sure. But
ain't nobody ready for that.
Yeah, no, we'll wait a good 15 to 20 years. I don't know however long that's going to take.
Yeah.
So, well, it'll be interesting to see how this transpires through, the Pluto in Aquarius energy.
Yeah. So I mean, that's definitely a day that feels radically different 12 hours later. I mean, You've got the Sun Pluto conjunction in Capricorn, which those never feel good. And then by that evening, 11 hours later, you've got the Sun and Pluto have both moved into Aquarius.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wow. And both of them, they're both. It's amazing because, like, Pluto doesn't move signs very often. The Sun's every 28 days or whatever. So, but or 30 days. But Pluto doesn't move very often in the signs. So that's interesting. They both go on the same day.
Yeah.
So moving on to the 23rd, we have Venus moving into Capricorn. So Venus going into Capricorn. I don't know. That makes me think of also getting your material possessions into kind of like in order, kind of putting them in order, making them organized, like your word for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Reorganizing your stuff.
Yeah.
And maybe too, that's decluttering or, getting rid of things that you don't need anymore. Because Capricorn can have that pragmatic kind of view of, I can get rid of this. I don't need it anymore.
Yeah. It's almost like this isn't really that important. So I'm just looking up the chart of that moment. There's a lot of Pluto, or a lot of Capricorn planets at that point, right? Mercury, Mars, Sun, Pluto. Oh, that's the 15th. Never mind.
Venus,
Venus moves. Yeah, Venus moves.
Okay.
Yep. So, I pulled up the wrong day, but they're starting to move out of Capricorn at that point. Yeah. Well, that's a good thing. Moving into something maybe that's a little bit like easier. But there is Mercury and Mars, and then Pluto moves out of it. So does the Sun. So things maybe will be a little bit lighter as January starts to cross and starts to go past. And then so on the 25th we have. So that leads us to the interesting thing that happens, which is the full moon. Do you have a special, practice or thing that you like to do during a full moon? Is there something that you think is like a healthy way to work with the full moon energy?
Hide. No. No, I mean, look, the full moon. The full moon's the buildup of energy. So the best thing to do at full moons is to stay away from crazy people, because people who are unhinged normally are going to be even more unhinged at the full moon. But it's like I do plan around them, like, because I know people will argue this, but me personally, I have found that in most cases there's a quick drop, like after the full moon, like the full moon energy's like gone. Like I find that it drops off like really super quickly, like sometimes like 5 minutes after the full moon, it's like, okay, I'm done. I need a nap. It's like the energy's done at that point. So it kind of depends on like, just so like what time is this? 12:50. So that full moon's at 1 o'clock. So for me, right before 1 o'clock. So for me, I'm gonna front load my day that day. I know that after 12:54, my energy level is gonna wane, probably. So I'm gonna try and get the hard stuff. I'm gonna try and do in the morning, or the bulkitude of stuff. I don't even know if bulkitude's a word. I may have just made that word up. But try and get the bulkitude of stuff done like early, like, and then just like try to coast like as much as possible, like after like 1 o'clock, because I know that I'm gonna like crash-ish at that
Yeah.
point.
I've had experiences like that too, where in the full moon, after the full moon, it's like you just kind of feel like a lull in your energy. And yeah, so
Yeah.
that could definitely be, it could definitely be a thing.
Just something
Yeah.
that I
Is wait.
throw out there, like if you're doing a full moon like ceremony or something like that, and like the full
Mm-hmm.
moon's in the middle of the day, like I would do it if you want to capture that energy. I would do it the day before, like if the full moon's at like 3 a.m. or 3 a.m. is not a good one. If it's at say 3 in the afternoon, like if you're gonna do a full moon thing, I do it the day before because that energy's still building the day. If you're not able to do it, like at the full moon, like exact, like I do it the day before instead of the day after, because by the day after, like the full moon energy's gone.
Mm, yeah, the full moon the energy of it's kind of dissipate. That makes sense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I agree, because it's almost like once it reaches the pinnacle of that, it's kind of a slope that goes down. I've had times when it was like an eclipse and intentions of like doing something during an eclipse and actually like doing it, and then like afterwards, like I just want to, after the eclipse passes, and I'm talking about a lunar eclipse, right? So after that, it's just like I just kind of go into the exhausted stage, and I'm like always, and that's happened to me before. I'm like, it's kind of an unusual tiredness, if that makes sense. That happens, but
yeah. And especially if the full moon's at the later degrees, and then there's like a void of course after that, then like I know that my day is done, like at the full moon, like that's my day's over at that point.
yeah, yeah, I totally could understand that. So then we can go to the 27th. The 27th is Sun square Jupiter in Aquarius and Taurus.
But those again are kind of three that I would kind of put together because there's
Mm-hmm.
a Sun
Oh, yeah.
Jupiter square, Uranus stations direct with the Sun in Aquarius, and rules Aquarius, and then Mercury's conjunct Mars. So I would call that day explosive, and that
Oh,
could
yeah.
because that could possibly be so. Sun square Jupiter can be, you know, feeling dark or dismal, maybe not feeling optimistic, and then Uranus
Mm-hmm.
station, and then Mercury conjunct Mars, and Mars is, Mercury conjunct Mars can be anger, or
Mm-hmm.
very quick mental processes, and the Uranus station, uh, you know, uh, there's almost always a big earthquake or something around the Uranus stations. Um, Now with Uranus stations are very chaotic. And for a week on either end too of that. Um, so that's just Sun square Jupiter, Uranus stationing, and then Mercury conjunct Mars, and that's all between like 2 a.m. and 10 a.m. So you're probably going to be up early that morning, and it's going to
Yeah.
be, I mean, if you have a big task or something to do, that's going to be a day when you can get a lot of stuff done for certain. But again, that's a avoid irrational people day.
Yeah. I
And
mean,
for a few days
conjunct
before
Mars.
that, especially with the full moon, yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Mercury conjunct Mars always makes you think of like somebody getting mad, saying something off the cuff, something like that. So you definitely want to watch what you're saying, or how you're thinking, and maybe even if you're frustrated, expressing it in a healthy way, figuring that out. But yeah, I agree with that, especially during a
yeah,
Uranus station. And Uranus is so strong because it's moving slow to go back, or to go
right.
it's station
It's
direct,
like
yeah, to go back. direct. Yep.
Yeah.
So on the 28th, we have a few things going on as well. We have Venus sextile Saturn, Mars square the nodes, and Mercury. Oh, we have a few things. Mercury trine Uranus and Venus trine Jupiter. So like the 27th and the 28th are big, big days.
Yeah.
There's a lot going on. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, with Mars square the node. So Venus sextile Saturn again. Organizing your toothpick drawer. Mars square the nodes is a planet square the nodes. That your energy level is going to be high, especially the day after a Uranus station.
Mm-hmm.
And then Mercury trine Uranus, I think, is flashes of brilliance or insights or like figuring things out quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Just Uranus is kind of the higher octave of Mercury, and all of that stuff is in Venus, Mars, Mercury are all in Capricorn.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's almost like Capricorn is the Capricorn organizing, getting things together in a certain way. It's kind of like ruling that day.
Yeah, and two with the Mars square the nodes. Does the few days on either end of that, on either side of that, will be the Mars energy is going to be high, so people's drive, initiative, whatnot will all be in high gear. And then at least the Venus Jupiter is the last of those in the evening, so at least that will Venus trine Jupiter is feel gooderies, so at least that will should be beneficial for but yeah, that's a lot of it, because with the Uranus station being felt a week on either end, and the full moon on the 25th, and Mars square the nodes overlapping those. I mean, that's a really, and all of those two are within a week of Pluto and the Sun entering Aquarius.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really like those like 8 days, or like that's Sun entering Aquarius loudly in Pluto.
Yeah, I mean, and it doesn't seem to stop. It just keeps going.
Right.
I don't know if these are exact, but I just pulled up the chart to look at that day. The 25th. I should be more specific about that because I looked up the full moon. And there's also Mars and Mercury. When they're conjunct, they're making a square to Chiron too. So there's also that too. There's a lot going on in that chart of the full moon. It's like it doesn't end; it just keeps going. Yeah. So the end of January is going to be an active month for change, for facilitating change. The last thing that happens, the last aspect that happens in January is on the 29th, and it's Mars making a trine to Uranus. Mars and Uranus. Oh boy. What do you think about Mars and Uranus?
Right. So that's quick, explosive energy. So like any kind of yeah. At least it's not a square. At least it's a trine and not a square. So maybe it's just at least it's not a square.
That's so funny and so true. Yeah, but Mars and Uranus oftentimes can be a signature for accidents, things happening kind of like explosively. So my question for you is, and maybe we'll get thrown off the internet for this, but do you have any kind of thoughts about what's been going on over in the Middle East in regards to all of this later January stuff that's coming up ahead of us? Is there anything that you've noticed, what's already taken place and what is going to be taking place in January?
So, I have not looked in that frame of reference.
Mm-hmm.
I would assume that that's still going on at that point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I believe when we get into and that's I've not looked much at those events.
Yeah.
I'd say
Well, that's
I
okay.
don't see those ending
Well,
in the near future. Although, I mean, it does appear to be settling down a little bit, but yeah, I'd probably need to take a deeper dive at the charts for the players involved in that scenario.
yeah, that makes sense. Well, this was fun and an interesting look at January in 2024. So
definitely ending with a bang there for certain.
yeah, no kidding. It's like the sitting on the edge of your seat.
Yeah, the first 3 weeks there of the year are there's lots of Capricorn energy and stuff that kind of keeps a lid on things, and then it really, after the 20th, things like really take off.
Yeah. Hopefully the rest of 24 is going to be more relaxed, although I highly doubt that is going to be the situation.
Yeah, we
So
know April's not.
yeah, April is going to be a little crazy.
Yeah, really, I would tell people to before, like, by the end of March, get things situated as good as possible.
Yeah. Well, that's always a good suggestion too. Yeah. Hmm. Well,
We'll get
this
more
was fun.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Was
Have to not wait 3 years between.
yeah, definitely. We won't. So,
Yeah,
all
well, no,
right.
yeah,
Well,
do one for next month.
yeah. Yeah, we'll share the upcoming stuff and the future months. April will be fun. But yeah, it'll be good. All right. So thanks for joining, Mark. And yeah, all right. Have a good one, everybody. We'll see you on the next one.
We'll see you soon.